Rain always made Taehyung uncomfortable. Not because of the thunder or the coldness crawling under his skin whenever the sky cracked open, but because rain reminded him too much of home, of slammed doors, bitter words, silent dinners that felt more like punishment than family gatherings. Tonight was no different. The bus rattled violently as it climbed the mountain road, the windows fogged from the storm outside. Taehyung rested his forehead against the cold glass and sighed quietly, watching blurred trees pass by like dark ghosts. His phone buzzed again. Mother. He stared at the screen for a long moment before declining the call. Immediately, another message appeared. Don't embarrass us there. Be useful for once, and stay away from the Johns' son. Taehyung scoffed softly. Too late for the first two. He shoved the phone into his pocket and looked down at the invitation sitting on his lap. Thick, black paper. Gold ink. The John family requests your presence at the engagement ceremony of John Y/N and Choi Minho. Underneath, in smaller writing, attendance mandatory for all relatives. Mandatory. As if they actually cared whether he came or not. Taehyung almost laughed. The Kim family never invited him anywhere unless they needed someone to criticize. He was the mistake child, the emotional punching bag, the Omega cousin nobody introduced proudly. He should have refused, but his grandmother had personally called him for the first time in 2 years. And when she said, "You owe this family your attendance," Taehyung knew he had no choice. The bus finally stopped in front of the estate. Taehyung stepped out into the pouring rain and immediately regretted existing. The Jeon mansion stood at the top of the hill, like something pulled from a nightmare. Massive black gates, endless windows glowing warm gold, marble statues staring down at him like judges. Rich people really enjoyed looking terrifying. A servant approached with an umbrella. You're Kim Taehyung, correct? He nodded awkwardly. The servant's eyes flickered strangely after hearing his name, like recognition or pity. We've been expecting you. That sentence alone almost made him get back on the bus. The inside of the mansion was even worse. Everything smelled expensive. Fresh lilies decorated the hallways. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, while people in designer clothing laughed softly around champagne glasses. Taehyung suddenly became hyper-aware of his wrinkled sweater. A few relatives noticed him instantly, and, as expected, disappointment filled their faces. Oh, that's what he wore? He looks exhausted. Still too skinny. Taehyung ignored them. Years of experience made it easy. He grabbed a drink from a passing tray and escaped toward the balcony, desperate for air. The rain outside came down harder now, violent against the gardens below. Still hiding from people? Taehyung turned instantly. Park Jimin leaned against the doorway with a grin. Warm. Familiar. Safe. Relief flooded Taehyung's chest. Jimin opened his arms dramatically. Come hug your favorite person. Taehyung nearly cried from happiness. Jimin had been his closest friend since childhood, one of the only people who treated him like a human being instead of an inconvenience. You came, Taehyung mumbled. Of course I came. Free food and rich people drama? I'd never miss it. Taehyung laughed quietly for the first time that night. Jimin studied him carefully afterward. You look nervous. I hate family events. You hate people. That too. Before Jimin could reply, another voice interrupted them. Well? Well. Kim Namjoon appeared holding 2 champagne glasses, followed closely by Jung Hoseok, who looked entirely too happy to be at a cursed mansion during a thunderstorm. "There's our runaway Omega," Hoseok teased. Taehyung groaned. "Please don't start." Too late. Hoseok pulled him into a dramatic hug anyway while Namjoon smiled softly. Unlike Taehyung's actual relatives, these three had become his real family over the years. Jimin protected him. Hoseok distracted him. Namjoon grounded him. Together, they kept him alive more times than they knew. "You know who's hosting tonight, right?" Hoseok whispered suddenly. Taehyung blinked. "The Jeons." "No," Hoseok said carefully. "The Jeons." That tone made Taehyung uncomfortable immediately. What's that supposed to mean? The three exchanged looks. And that was strange. Very strange. Because Jimin never hid gossip. Namjoon sighed first. "The Jeons are complicated." "That's a polite way to put it," Hoseok muttered. Taehyung frowned. "Okay. Now you're making me curious." Jimin opened his mouth. But suddenly the entire ballroom downstairs fell silent. Not quieter. Silent. Like someone had cut the sound out of the world. Taehyung turned slowly toward the staircase and saw him. Jeon Jeongguk descended the stairs wearing all black. Black dress shirt, black rings decorating tattooed fingers, dark eyes sharp enough to split someone open. Beautiful. But not softly beautiful. No. Jungkook looked dangerous. The type of man people wrote warnings about. The type mothers pulled their children away from. The type Taehyung should have looked away from immediately. But he couldn't. Neither could anyone else. Jungkook walked calmly through the ballroom while guests lowered their eyes respectfully, fearfully. Taehyung noticed that part. Fear. Not admiration. Not respect. Fear. And somehow that made Jungkook even scarier. "Who was that?" Taehyung whispered. Jimin looked uneasy. "That's Jeon Jeongguk." Taehyung blinked. The Jeon heir? He expected someone older, not someone who looked young enough to ruin lives recreationally. As if sensing the attention, Jungkook looked up. Directly at Taehyung. The eye contact hit like a physical blow. Taehyung's stomach twisted instantly. Something about Jungkook's gaze felt wrong, too intense, too aware. Like he wasn't simply looking at Taehyung, he was studying him, memorizing him. Taehyung looked away first. Bad idea. Because moments later, footsteps approached the balcony. Slow. Controlled. The atmosphere shifted immediately. Even Hoseok straightened nervously. Jungkook stopped beside them. Up close, he was somehow worse. Prettier. Sharper. Terrifying. His gaze moved lazily across Jimin, Namjoon, and Hoseok before settling on Taehyung again. "Kim Taehyung," he said softly. Not a question. Taehyung swallowed. "Yes?" A strange smile touched Jungkook's lips. "There you are." The sentence made chills crawl down Taehyung's spine. Jimin stepped forward slightly. Protective. Jungkook noticed. Of course he noticed. People like him noticed everything. "Do I know you?" Taehyung asked carefully. Jungkook tilted his head. "No." A pause. "Not yet." Taehyung suddenly understood why everyone feared him. Because Jungkook spoke like someone holding a knife behind his back. Polite, elegant, and deeply threatening. Before Taehyung could respond, a woman called Jungkook's name from downstairs. Jungkook sighed almost irritably. Then his eyes returned to Taehyung one last time. "You should stay away from the East Wing after midnight," he said casually. Taehyung frowned. "Why?" Jungkook smiled wider. "You'll see things you won't recover from." And then he walked away. Just like that. The silence he left behind somehow felt louder than before. Hoseok exhaled shakily. "Well?" Taehyung stared towards the staircase. What the hell was that? Nobody answered immediately, which terrified him more. Hours later, Taehyung couldn't sleep. The guest room felt suffocatingly cold. Despite the expensive fireplace burning nearby, rain hammered violently against the windows, and Jungkook's voice kept replaying inside his head. There you are. Like he'd been searching for him. Taehyung rubbed his face tiredly before deciding he needed water. The mansion hallways were almost completely dark at night. Only dim golden lamps lit the endless corridors. Taehyung quietly walked downstairs and froze. Someone was standing at the end of the hallway, watching him. Jeongguk. Of course. He stood motionless in the shadows, wearing only black sweatpants and a loose white shirt, tattooed arm resting against the wall casually, like he'd been waiting. Taehyung's pulse quickened instantly. You scared me. Jeongguk hummed softly. You're awake late. So are you. A tiny smile appeared. Cute. Almost normal. I don't sleep well. Neither do psychopaths, Taehyung almost said. Instead, he forced politeness. I was getting water. Jeongguk walked closer slowly. Too close. Taehyung could suddenly smell his cologne. Dark wood and smoke. Do you always look this nervous around strangers? Jeongguk asked quietly. You're intimidating. That's honest. You asked. Jeongguk laughed softly at that, and annoyingly enough, the sound was beautiful. Taehyung hated that immediately. Most people lie to me, Jeongguk murmured. Maybe they're scared of you. Are you scared of me, Taehyung? The way he said his name felt intimate somehow. Dangerously intimate. Taehyung stepped back instinctively. Jeongguk noticed. Again. That strange smile returned. Not offended. Amused. Like Taehyung's fear entertained him. And for some reason, that hurt. You should sleep, Taehyung muttered. Jeongguk's eyes darkened slightly. Stay a little longer. It wasn't a request. That realization made panic crawl softly into Taehyung's stomach. The hallway suddenly felt too quiet, too empty. Jeongguk stepped closer again, and this time Taehyung noticed something on his knuckles. Blood. Fresh blood. Taehyung's breath caught. Jeongguk followed his gaze calmly before looking back up. Oh, he said casually. That's not mine. Taehyung froze. Silence. Thunder cracked outside violently. Then, a scream echoed somewhere upstairs.